Daf Yomi, Tractate Menachot, page 9. Starting at the bottom of 8b for context, the Gemara raises an objection to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan from a Braita. Rabbi Yehuda ben Matera says, from where is it derived that if non-Yehudim surrounded the temple, if Gentiles surrounded the temple courtyard, and were firing projectiles inside to the point that it became impossible to remain in the courtyard on account of the threat? These are the kind of things that they were dealing with those days. Lighter, like they say in Yiddish. Lighter means like, I mean, you wouldn't say it like that, but it'd be like, it was like, it's a shame, it's like, a second moment, let me get my pointer. Lighter. It means like, it's too bad. That's an expression, Yiddish. That the priests enter the sanctuary and partake of the offerings of the most sacred order and the remainders of the meal offerings while inside the sanctuary, the verse states. This brings us to our daily page, daily Daf Yomi. Menachos Tes, and top of the page, because every meal offering of theirs and every sin offering of theirs and every guilt offering of theirs which they may render unto me shall be most holy for you and for your sons. In the sanctuary you shall eat them. Numbers 18, 9, and 10. This indicates that although the mitzvah is to consume offerings of the most sacred order in the courtyard, in certain instances the priest may consume these offerings inside the sanctuary, the most holy place. The Gemara explains its objection. But according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, why do I need this verse? Let him say here, as well as the verse states, in the court of attempted meeting they shall eat it. Leviticus 6:9, meaning in the temple courtyard. It is logical that the halacha with regard to the minor area should not be more stringent than the halacha with regard to the major one. Meaning, if one may consume a peace offering in the temple courtyard, then all the more so may he consume it in the sanctuary. Avodat de'adam oved bimkom rabo, amrinan shelo yehi tefer chamor min ha'ikar, achila she'en adam ochel bimkom rabo, tamati chazav kra, ala katav kra, lo yehi tefer chamor min ha'ikar, lo yamrinan. The Gemara explains consuming an offering is not the same as slaughtering it. The slaughter of an offering is part of the sacrificial service, and it is considered disrespectful for a person to serve his master in the place of his master, meaning within the sanctuary as well as in the courtyard. Therefore, we say that the halacha with regard to the minor area should not be more stringent than the halacha with regard to the major one, but by contrast, with regard to the consumption of an offering, since a person may not eat in the place of his master, the only reason that it is permitted to consume an offering inside the sanctuary is that it is written in the verse, in a most holy place you shall eat them. Had this not been written in the verse explicitly, we would not say that the halacha with regard to the minor area should not be more stringent than the halacha with regard to the major one. Itmar, we learn, it was stated, if one mixed the oil of the meal offering into it outside the wall of the temple courtyard, Rabbi Yochanan says that it is disqualified. And Reish Lakish says that it is valid. Reish Lakish says that it is valid as it is written, and he shall pour oil upon it and put frankincense upon it. Leviticus 2:1. And then it is written, and he shall bring it to Aaron's sons the priests, and he shall remove. Leviticus 2:2. Reish Lakish explains, the sages derive from here that the removal of the handful onward, the rites performed with the meal offering, are solely a mitzvah of the priesthood. Accordingly, the verse taught about pouring and mixing, that they are valid when performed by a non-priest, and from the fact that the priesthood is not required for the mixing, it may be derived that it is also not required that its performance be inside the walls of the temple courtyard. But Rabbi Yochanan ma besula kevan das vyasam bechliu ni nechvuru nabai v'nim yas ba'it tanya kavas Rabbi Yochanan b'lalazah k'shera v'utz nechomas azar b'zuna. Rabbi Yochanan says this meal offering is disqualified since a meal offering performance is in a service vessel. Therefore, granted that the priesthood is not required, yet in any event its performance inside the temple courtyard is required. The Gemara notes that it is taught in a Braita in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. If a meal offering was mixed by a non-priest, it is valid. But if it was mixed outside the wall of the temple courtyard, it is disqualified. Itmar mincha shechas lakodem kemitza. Rabbi Yochanan ma yavi b'toch beiso yimalenu. It was stated with regard to a meal offering that it became lacking in its full measure before the removal of the handful. Rabbi Yochanan says that the owner shall bring additional flour from within his home and shall fill the missing part of the measure of the meal offering. Reish Lakish says he shall not bring flour from within his home and fill it. Instead, he must bring a new meal offering. Rabbi Yochanan Amal, maybe mitoch beito yimalena k'mitzah kabalei. Reish Lakish Amar, lo mitoch beito yimalena k'mitzah kabalei. Where were we? The Gemara explains, Rabbi Yochanan says that he brings flour from within his home and he fills it, as the removal of the handful establishes it as a meal offering to the extent that it may become disqualified. Before the removal, one may always add flour to the meal offering. Reish Lakish says he shall not bring flour from within his home and fill it, as the sanctity of a service vessel establishes it as a meal offering. Therefore, once the meal offering was placed in the service vessel and sanctified, it is disqualified if it becomes lacking. Rabbi Yochanan raised an objection to Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Reish Lakish, from a Mishnah in Negaim 14:10, discussing the log of oil brought by a leper. In a case where the log lacked a full measure, if it became lacking before the priest poured from it into his palm, in order to place it on the right thumb and on the big toe of the leper, he shall fill it. Clearly, the service vessel containing the log does not sanctify the oil to the extent that it can become disqualified. The Gemara notes, indeed, this is a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Reish Lakish. Itmar, it was stated, Shiraim shechazcho ben k'mitzah lektoreh, Rabbi Yochanan amar maktir kol metz aleihem, Reish Lakish amar, ein maktir kol metz aleihem, alivet Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Eliezer, Kuli Alma Pligi, Ki Pligi Liv Rabbi Yehoshua. It was stated, with regard to the remainder of a meal offering that became lacking between the removal of a handful and its burning upon the altar, Rabbi Yochanan says that one burns the handful on account of such a remainder, and that the remainder is then permitted for consumption. And Reish Lakish says that one does not burn the handful on account of the remainder. The Gemara notes, according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, everyone agrees that the handful is burned on account of the remainder. In other words, both Amoraim, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, concur that this is the halacha according to the Tana Rabbi Eliezer. When they disagree, it is concerning the halacha according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua. The Tzinan, before we learn the Mishnah, Nitnu Shiraya, Nisfu Shiraya, Abdu Shiraya, Kemidas Rabbi Eliezer Kishera, Kemidas Yehoshua Pesulo. As we learn in the Mishnah in 26a, if after the handful is removed, the remainder of the meal offering became ritually impure, or if the remainder of the meal offering was burned, or if the remainder of the meal offering was lost, according to the principle of Rabbi Eliezer, who says that with regard to an animal offering, the blood is fit for sprinkling, even if there is no meat that can be eaten, the meal offering is fit, and the priest burns the handful. But according to the principle of Rabbi Yehoshua, who says that with regard to an animal offering, the blood is fit for sprinkling only if there is meat that can be eaten, it is unfit, and the priest does not burn the handful, as the handful serves to render the remainder permitted. Man de pasal Rabbi Yehoshua, man de machshir ad kano amar Rabbi Yehoshua hasam ela delo ish tayar aval hecha ish tayar afilu Rabbi Yehoshua modile. The one who disqualifies the remainder of the meal offering that became lacking between the removal of the handful and its burning upon the altar, meaning Reish Lakish, holds in accordance with the plain meaning of the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua. And the one who deems that remainder fit, meaning Rabbi Yochanan, maintains that when Rabbi Yehoshua says that the remainder is unfit, he says so only there in a case where nothing remained from the meal offering other than the remainder, since the handful is intended to render permitted for consumption the render of a meal offering. If there is no remainder at all, then the handful is not burned. But in a case where there remained a portion of the remainder, Rabbi Yochanan maintains that even Rabbi Yehoshua concedes to Rabbi Eliezer that the handful is fit to be burned. Titania, Rabbi Yehoshua Omer, כל הזבחים שבתורה שנשאר מהם כזעיס, פסר וכזעיס חלב, זורק הדם. כחצי זעיס פסר וכחצי זעיס חלב. אינו זורק את הדם. The Gemara sets a proof for Rabbi Yochanan. It is clear that this is Rabbi Yehoshua's opinion, as it is taught in a Braita, as Rabbi Yehoshua says with regard to any of the offerings that are mentioned in the Torah, from which there remains either an olive bulk of meat or an olive bulk of fat. The halacha is that the priest sprinkles the blood of that offering and thereby permits either the remaining meat for consumption or the remaining fat for sacrifice upon the altar. But if there remains only half an olive bulk of meat and half an olive bulk of fat, he does not sprinkle the blood, as the consumption or burning of anything less than an olive bulk is not significant enough to warrant the sprinkling of the blood. The volumes of the meat and the fat do not combine to form a whole olive bulk. ובאוילה, אפילו כחצי זעיס בשר וכחצי זעיס חלב זורק את הדם, מפני שבעולה כולה כליל ובמנחה אף על פי שכולה קיימת לא יזרוק. The Braita continues, and in the case of a burnt offering, even if there remains only half an olive bulk of flesh and half an olive bulk of fat, he sprinkles the blood, because in the case of a burnt offering, it is entirely consumed, meaning, as the flesh and fat are both burned upon the altar, there is in fact an olive bulk of the offering that is designated for burning upon the altar. And with regard to a meal offering, even though it remains entirely intact, he shall not sprinkle. To be continued, 9b in the next video. Bezrat Hashem.